Hello everyone. It's me, Arden Lee. I am back with another video, and today's video is about learned helplessness. What is learned helplessness, and how can we break our way out of it? If you are not yet familiar with me or my work, my name is Arden Lee. I am the creator of the Repatterning Project, which is an 8-week course where we examine our patterns, we hack our beliefs, we engineer our decisions, our choices, our everyday habits for success, happiness, abundance, and fulfillment. So if that sounds like something that you are interested in, go ahead and check out the description box where I have a link to a free PDF guide about the Repatterning Project so that you can check out what it is that we do. And I also have a link to a Facebook community called the Repatterning Parlor, which I personally moderate, and I would love to see you there. It's a group of like-minded individuals who are also on the paths to their success, personal growth, and happiness. And as you know, having that support system is so crucial. It's so crucial to our personal development. So go ahead and give that a click through and say hi. Let me know how you found us. And as always, of course, if you haven't done so already, I would love to invite you to subscribe to my channel, like my page. Wherever you found me, I'd love to stay connected. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about learned helplessness. The phenomena of learned helplessness is what happens when we don't feel that we have any other options around us except to stay trapped in our current circumstances. And learned helplessness is one of those things that we really want to tread carefully, because it can certainly sound kind of victim blamey if we're blaming people for being trapped in situations, for feeling trapped in situations where maybe they're not actually trapped, maybe they could get out. So there's this rhetoric around like, well, why don't you just leave, right? But learned helplessness actually is a phenomena that explains why people don't leave difficult or abusive situations, because sometimes they don't see the options that are in front of them. And this is the metaphor that helped me understand why I didn't leave so many difficult or abusive situations that I was in earlier parts of my life. Essentially, learned helplessness was explained by an experiment done by a bunch of researchers to a group of dogs. And it's kind of a mean experiment. It's not, it's not, it's definitely not PETA approved, but it makes a point that I want to make here. So I'm going to talk about this experiment with the hopes that no one believes I'm endorsing running experiments like this on dogs, but hopefully you do understand the metaphor behind it for its teachable moment. Essentially, what will happen, researchers found, is that if you put a dog into a cage with the door open and you administer an electrical shock to that dog, the dog will leave the cage as soon as you shock it. It's not stupid. It's like, wow, you just shocked me. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going to leave the cage. But what happens if you put a dog in a cage and you lock the cage door and you shock that dog so that it can't leave, and then later, after it's become conditioned to this response already, if later you open that door and you shock the dog again, even though the door is now open and it can leave, the dog doesn't understand that it can leave. It still stays there in the cage because it is so accustomed to having been shocked over and over again. So how does this apply to us as humans who are examining our patterns and examining the choices that we have in front of us? Well, for many of us, this harkens back to childhood abuse or childhood trauma. When we are children, it is virtually impossible, if not outright impossible, for us to leave the caretaking of our parents, right? If we grow up in a household, I tried to legally emancipate myself from an abusive parent when I was 14 or 15. I was 14 when I attempted, and it was 15 by the time the case went to court. And believe me, that was the longest and most awkward year of my life. So I tried to legally emancipate myself from an abusive parent, And I failed. The court said, you're a minor. We don't care, and we think that whatever you're going through, I don't know. They just didn't believe me. They didn't think that it merited my getting to choose at age 15 where I wanted to live. I didn't want to have to visit on the custody schedule the parent who was continuing to abuse me, and the court did not agree with me. The court thought otherwise. So if you are someone who was brought up in a family situation where there was abuse, where there was trauma, maybe your parents tried really hard, but maybe there was alcoholism involved, or substance misuse, or mental illness, whatever love your parents may have tried to give to you, maybe there were other factors involved that didn't allow them to parent as well as they could have. And so there was trauma that was being inflicted on you as a child. Now, that's when you're the dog in the cage and the door is shut. You actually can't get out, right? That's for real. That's like, you could leave, you can't leave that situation even though the shocks are being applied. And then when we grow up and we get into our adult lives, we enter into relationships, into work situations, into friendships or partnerships where that same kind of trauma or that same kind of abuse is happening, because as we know, it is familiar to us. So we get into those situations, and then, I stayed in an abusive situation, an abusive relationship for 4.5 years that absolutely mirrored the abuse and the trauma that I experienced at the hands of my father, And so there I am, and I'm in this abusive relationship, and the truth of the situation is that I could have left at any time. Yes, I was pretty firmly entangled in that situation because I was also working with the person involved, so it also involved my livelihood at the time. But I certainly, after a while, had enough money saved up to where, I could have gone out and started a new career. I could have left the situation. There are many, many things that I could have done in those circumstances. And if worse came to worse, I always could have moved back home with my parents. Now, there are people who are in abusive situations who don't have those options. Maybe they don't have the money to leave the situation, or they don't have a family that they can move back in with, right? So I don't want to dismiss those legitimate concerns and those legitimately horrifying situations when I talk about the phenomena of learned helplessness. But whatever your situation is and whatever conditions you are facing, the lesson that we learn from understanding learned helplessness is to expand our understanding of our options. Maybe there are, friends that would be happy to have us stay with them for a while. When my mom, left my dad, when she left her marriage to my father, we stayed on friends' couches for a good 2-3 months. It wasn't an easy situation, especially with me having to get to school and everything like that. But we found a way. We made it work. So there's even though it's important to show compassion to yourself and to others who are in those difficult situations, what we understand from learned helplessness is that we are not served by continuing to find all the reasons why we need to stay trapped in that situation. We can also forgive ourselves, because if this happens to dogs in an experiment, we as humans, we might like to think that we're smart, but we are subject to those same biological patterns, those same ways that our brains learn and take in information. And when I read about that experiment about learned helplessness, and I understand how it really functioned, that was the first time for me that I was able to really experience self-forgiveness and an understanding and compassion for myself for why I didn't leave those situations. But now that I understand it, I know that instead of whenever I feel trapped or whenever I feel like there's not a way out, I always look and I try and ask some outside perspective. I go to my support circle and I say, looks like this is what's happening to me, and these are all the reasons that I feel like I can't find a way out. Like, maybe since you're not in the cage, maybe you have an outsider's perspective on some things that will be possible for me, some ways that I can get help to get out of this situation currently. So the best thing that I can recommend is if you feel like you're stuck somewhere, if you feel like you're trapped, if you feel like there's nothing you can do, start to look at backwards engineering how to get out of that situation. What are your immediate options? What are your immediate resources? Are there resources in your blind spots that you haven't necessarily been considering? This happens to me all the time, you guys. This is like, and this is not about an abusive situation or anything like that, but I was convinced that, you know, I didn't have a budget to make a music video for my first ever music video. So you know, I shot and edited most of it on my phone. I collected found footage from other people, and I'm really proud of what I made. But my limiting belief in that capacity was that I did not have the ability to make a professionally shot music video at that time because I didn't have the funds for it, because I'd put all of my finances by that point into the creation of my album, which had come out just the month before. And I realized a couple months later, I was talking to my friend Adam Lyons, who I later hired as my business coach. I was speaking to him, and I was talking out, you know, my options for videos. And then I remembered, I was like, Adam actually worked in video production for years. You know, he would probably, he'd probably help me out with that. And I said, hey, if I were to, to fly to Texas, which is where he currently lives, if I were to fly to Texas and maybe like do a trade for a week, maybe I could like intern for you for your coaching company, or I could like produce some content or some material that you could use, you know, for your work. Would you teach me filmmaking so that I could have a better understanding of how to make a video? And he was like, yeah, and you're a friend, you know, you don't even have to intern for me for a week. We could do that in one day. I'd be happy to teach you that. And sure enough, when I went down to Texas to start off my business coaching with him, along with my business coaching package, he threw in a day where we had a shoot and we did a music video. So it's all about just that brainstorming to really look at what all your options are and look at the things that are in your blind spots. I hadn't even considered at that point that my friend Adam would be someone that I could maybe count on to help me with my video production. I figured, I was like, well, I'm all alone in the world and I don't have the budget to hire a professional, so I'll edit it on my phone. And for the record, I'm still incredibly proud of how it came out. But of course, as an artist, I always want to keep growing and improving. So it's about looking in your blind spots for the resources that you've forgotten that you even had to begin with. And in that capacity, then you can start to really get a better grasp of what is out there and the other options that you have for doing things in a new way, rather than staying just right where you are. So I hope this was helpful. That is the learned helplessness phenomenon, and the more awareness we bring to it, the better we can expand our viewpoints to see what more of our choices are. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video.